Well, the Indiana Fever season has come to an end. Here at Connecticut, I'm up high because they're cleaning down on the court, clearly making a transition to something else for tomorrow night. That's how it goes in these arenas. But for the Fever, they were going home anyway, but they were hopeful to keep their season alive with this series. It's a best-of-3 situation, something obviously they're going to have to open up and take a look at with the new collective bargaining agreement, because much like you think back to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and getting into overtime and only one quarterback taking the field, well, in this situation, Indiana Fever had the best attendance all season. They get to the playoffs and do not even get a home game. But this was a tough, intense, competitive game throughout. Both teams had laws. Both teams were lackadaisical at times. It was the Indiana Fever getting off to a good start, jumping ahead, and I thought it was on par and exactly what they were looking for, with Caitlin Clark knocking down a three about 30 seconds in, and then a similar fashion with a basket to begin the second half. But also not some things you don't like about this matchup, and mostly that comes down to how they closed the game. Fever had a 2-point advantage with 2:05 remaining, and they failed to close in efficient manner. They had a couple missed shots, then a couple turnovers, and all during this stretch, as we saw the Connecticut Sun, I think, close on a 14-2 run. I thought you saw the experience truly shine through for this Connecticut Sun team, because they canned 3 straight triples. Marina Mabrey again caught fire. Kelsey Mitchell missed a wide open shot, got her own rebound, but then turned it over. I would have also liked to see there in about a 2-minute span, Caitlin did not touch the ball, and you want to go down. Kelsey talked about over the last couple of days, they're going to have to die on their sword here in this game to try to extend the season. And you would have liked to see Caitlin get another shot when it was competitive there. I think she put one up with 12 seconds, but by then the game was over. A lot of defensive versatility stood out to me with this Connecticut Sun team. They threw so many different defenders at Caitlin, at Kelsey. You had DeWanna Bonner, you had Veronica Burton not only stepping up, but getting additional playing time because she played so well in this one. You obviously had Carrington, Alyssa Thomas, really good defensively, and especially what she was able to do offensively. We talked to Caitlin Clark, we talked to Leah Boston and Christy Sides post game, and as you would expect, kind of a mixed reaction from them. They weren't ready for this season to be over with. They're not sure what they're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, as they gear up for whatever is next. And this is a game rather where Leah Boston really popped off throughout. And in fact, I would have liked to see them go and play through her more in the post, because she was so effective in this one. Had a double-double, 19 rebounds, clearly a career high because this is only her second postseason game. But she was one of the players you really had to like what she was able to contribute for this Indiana Fever team tonight. Now, there were so many just unusual things that happened right here inside Mohegan Sun Arena. Various things that stood out. First of all, you had Caitlin Clark go to an official and point out a fan sitting courtside that clearly said something. Well, I talked to that fan at halftime, and he said, I said 2 words, stop whining, and he was frustrated because he was with his daughter and didn't like how that played out. Now, he returned to his seat after having a brief conversation with security for the building, so he was able to remain there. You had several tangle-ups. You had DeWanna Bonner throwing a couple elbows at Caitlin. You had Caitlin getting a little physical. Then you had a couple sequences down there towards the basket. At the end of the half, Erica Wheeler misses a key layup, and you think back to Fever being up 2 with 2:05 left. She makes that layup to end the half. Maybe they're up 4 there with 2 minutes left. And why they really needed that layup more than just the 2 points is because they closed the half poorly. Connecticut Sun did a very good job of doing that, finishing quarters, finishing the half, and obviously, as I mentioned, finishing the game on whatever that 14-2 run it was to close out this one.
Yeah, obviously a tough one, especially because we climbed all the way back in and definitely had our opportunities late, and then a few different miscues, and it's back to a 2-possession game, and we couldn't quite get over the hump there. So, like AB said, it's a good little taste of what's possible for this organization and for this franchise, and there's a lot for us to hold our heads high about. This team won 5 games 2 years ago. So we're a young group, a pretty inexperienced group, but we came together and I had a lot of fun playing with one another. And that's sometimes the worst part of it is like you feel like you're really playing your best basketball and then it has to end. And but like I said, proud of this group, stayed resilient all year and had a lot of fun together.
Just looking at how far we've come from the start of the season to now, I mean, I'm just super proud of our group because I think we had such a special 12, and I just can't wait to see what the future holds.
You know, we're all competitors in that locker room, and so it doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good to leave here and not have the opportunity to get another one and an opportunity to move forward. But the resiliency that these guys showed all year, but God dang, give Connecticut credit, right? Like they are an extremely good team. Proud of these guys for how we played on Sunday, and they took from that and really did what we asked them to do tonight and gave ourselves a chance to win.
NaLyssa Smith did not start. She started like 95% of the games this season, but she was that was a change and an adjustment that the coaching staff decided on. They really like Temiafak Benlay's her experience. She has playoff experience. She also has some leadership, and more than anything, it's how she plays within the flow of the game with those starters, and in particular, how she runs the floor. That's one of her best attributes. And to her credit, she was finishing layups tonight. That had been a bugaboo for her. Probably a month or two ago, coming off that injury, missing a couple of layups on the interior during certain games. So that was something new, something different in this game. Now, this is one that I know a lot of Fever fans watching back home, watching across the nation, are disappointed at, that their season is over because it's coming so abruptly, and that's what's so disappointing, I know, to so many of the fans out there. And here at Mohegan Sun, here, take a look at this building. About almost 9,000 fans in this one, and I would say about half of them felt like they were Caitlin Clark or certainly cheering for the Indiana Fever. So it wasn't a true road game, but it also did have some road feel, some intensity, some missed calls and officiating. How physical would that be allowed? Because in the first half we saw too often the Connecticut Sun go to the free throw line. They're better than any team in the league at doing so. So it wasn't entirely surprising for them to be able to do that. I mentioned all the various odd things that happened. But I mentioned that layup, too, of Erica Wheeler. Not only did she miss it, but she went into a courtside cameraman and did something to her thumb, was checked out. It was a brief, scary moment as teammates and staff members surrounded her. But she was able to come back, cleared for the second half, and did so in a limited role there. And had a nice little spark, but then maybe a little bit too much of her at that point guard spot. That clearly would upset Caitlin, and she really wanted to run it up the floor and try to get into their actions. We saw it efficient and effective early in the game, not so much, as Connecticut Sun are just such a good defensive team. They're really able to have success on that end of the floor and what they're trying to get accomplished, because coming into this one, pace was the number one factor for this Fever team. That's what they focused on. Secondly, to get that pace, you got to get stops defensively, and they did several different times throughout this game. I think even a 12-2 run, I want to say, in that fourth quarter, because they trailed by as many as 11 in the final stanza. That's also what made that that comeback so impressive, but you shouldn't allow for it to get to that level. I mean, it was a 20-2 run, I believe, bridging halftime and into that third quarter. If you want to point to a sequence where the Fever lost that one in this game, it was probably that sequence. Now, they still had a chance, because with Caitlin in this group, you always have a chance, but that was so costly. I would have liked to see a timeout or two used during that run, a better response from the Fever team out on the floor, because a little bit discombobulated, and I thought during that sequence, too, you could feel the inexperience because they didn't get into actions, and a player might get a shot clock violation, and then it's a turnover, and then Caitlin dribbling, I think, on the near sideline. Just a small mistake, but compounded, made all the difference, and that was certainly frustrating, I know, for this Fever team. But some growing pains, to be clear, but as a whole, a mightily successful season for this Fever team. Coming in, much like the Pacers, the focus and attention was to get back to the playoffs. For the Fever, he had to go back nearly a decade, too, since 2016. not only did they get back to the playoffs, but on top of that, they clinched with like 7 games to go in early September. Then they had to go out on the road here and try to win a couple of games. And I think looking back in the big picture, their last couple of weeks was a little bit rocky. Played higher level opponents, but did not have the success that they had in the previous weeks. You would have liked to see them carry a little bit more confidence and momentum here into the postseason. And all along, this Connecticut Sun team is difficult to play and has been difficult to play. The Fever have not won here in this building, in this arena, since 2016. That always seems to go back to Tamika Catchings in that era. And by the way, the last time they won here, their coach was Stephanie White, now the head coach in her second year with this Connecticut Sun team. But still a lot for this Fever group to be proud of. Remember, just 2 years ago, 5 wins. Last year, 13 wins. It was a 20-win season, back to the playoffs, crushed attendance, crushed TV numbers, and as Kelsey Mitchell would say, shout out to C-Squared, because obviously Caitlin making a big difference there. And now as we go into the offseason, we'll have exit interviews here coming up over the weekend, but probably the number one storyline for me is Caitlin will go dark, right, for the first time in 12 months, basically, because she had been in the spotlight with Iowa in college basketball and then going basically straight into the WNBA season. Secondly, what does the offseason look like for Aaliyah Boston? Because she's another player. Just 22, like Caitlin, you expect him to make another big leap. Another additional key storyline, contract status with Kelsey Mitchell. She is a free agent. The time has passed to negotiate something new now. So you really have to wait several months, I think, to perhaps January 1 or so to get to that level. And obviously you want Kelsey back, and because of the collective bargaining agreement and certain structures, that's probably going to happen for the Fever. Elsewhere, I do expect a lot of the core pieces to be back, like Alexi Hall, but you can understand them making some changes as well. You'd like to add some size and add some defense out on the wing. To me, that's your number one priority. You have the offense. You have the scoring ability. You need to have more wing defenders in particular. Also could improve that 4 position, I think, as well. But overall, as I said, a successful season for the Indiana Fever. Can't thank you enough for following my coverage on Fieldhouse Files and on my YouTube page throughout the entirety of this WNBA season. My coverage actually goes all the way back to, I want to say, mid-December, when the Fever clinched the number 1 seed. And we're hoping, fingers crossed, that Caitlin Clark would enter her name into the WNBA draft. And, of course, she did a couple months later, reached the NCAA title game but lost. And then right away, the Fever made her the number 1 pick. And the WNBA has not been the same since. Record ratings, merchandise, sponsorships, ticket sales. I feel bad a little bit for ownership in the Pacers because they are not getting massive revenue, millions of dollars, for at least one playoff game at Cambridge Fieldhouse on Friday. Mostly I feel bad for the team and the coaches, and as well as the fans who have been there throughout the season. I don't want to necessarily say night in and night out because it is a tough ticket, an expensive ticket to get, but those then also followed along with me throughout the entirety of this season, so I appreciate your support going all the way back probably to December. It'll continue into the offseason. I'm not going anywhere. Crazy to believe that Pacer season kind of officially starts on Monday with Media Day, followed by the first day of training camp coming up on Tuesday. But it's a loss here tonight for the Fever. 87-81 to the Connecticut Sun in their final game of the season. And that will do it for me from Mohegan Sun Arena. I'm Scott Agness for FieldhouseFiles.com.